Hey YouTube, today I want to talk about the Canon R6. I want to do a grand, big overview summary of the last 2 years of having used this camera for personal, for business, professional, travel, you name it, rentals, EF gear, RF gear, adapted gear, macro, using all of the features. I really have had great exposure with it, and I'm finally ready to share that with you. One of the reasons I didn't do this 2 years ago or a year ago was I actually didn't like this camera for the first few months I had it. I was really struggling with it. And the reason was I had all of these old lenses that really looked and worked like crap on this camera. My lenses were working fine on the Canon 6D because both of the technologies were developed at about the same time. They were in sync with each other, they were compatible, and the quality was at an expected level. But once I moved those lenses adapted over to the Canon R6, oh boy, did I see a huge problem with the autofocus not tracking properly, leaving my subjects blurry, and the overall quality just not meeting where the RF lenses or even really high-tier EF lenses were at. Things really came to a head for me when I sold that gear, or some of it, and my old camera, the Canon 6D. Once I was released from that DSLR world, I really fully embraced where I'm at, along with a couple of other things that were happening along the way, which we'll get into. But just to focus on the lenses for a moment, because this is a really important point. If you were coming to the system like I was from an older DSLR, very affordable gear and kit, the old 50mm 1.8, the 35mm f2 micro motor, this 24-105 f4, the version 1, the 85mm EF 85mm 1.8, all of these lenses do not work 100% with the Canon R6 and probably not the Canon R5. They're not fast enough and they're not sharp enough compared to all of their competitors. You know, the L series 1.2 and 1.4 lenses, all of the RF kits, they're all going to seriously outperform all of the lenses that I had. And for a long time I couldn't understand why, because Canon had explained that everything would be adaptable and be just fine, doing its basic features. But through testing over 2 years, I clearly learned that this is not true. And once I sold the gears and started using some better stuff, it became clear to me I was now getting the full advantage of the Canon R6's abilities. And one of the reasons I ended up selling the Canon 6D and not keeping it around as even a backup was over the 2 years, as I was picking it up and trying it and testing it and using it for different things, I liked it less and less and less. And to the point where the last time I picked it up, I actually thought it was broken. Compared to the R6, the 6D was just awful at its dynamic range. Sure, you could recover that image in its raw through an image processor, but if you can't even see what you're working with to begin with, it's hard to know if you're actually getting the creative content you want while you're on set and while you're in studio. So I knew I had to get rid of it, and I definitely fully adopted and embraced the mirrorless system now. I would never go back. I would never even want to go back. There's just so much improvement and so much to enjoy. So moving on, let's talk about something that I never predicted that was going to happen 2 years ago. Another reason I didn't like the camera was I was just a photographer with subpar equipment, with work that didn't meet my standard. But even once I met that, I still felt like it wasn't enough. But once I got into video work, oh boy, did my opinion change of the Canon R6 and these new systems. You can go back and look at my very first video shot on the Canon 6D at 1080p and just look at how awful it looked. And I can remember how difficult it was trying to position the camera so that the focus was on my face at all times, because I didn't have an external flip-out monitor that I could see if I was getting the exposure correct or the composition correct. So all of these things I can now do with the Canon R6 that made videos so much more enjoyable and easier to work with and helped me get the quality that I expected. So I'm now shooting this with a flip-out screen. I know the exposure is good. I know I'm in focus. I know it's tracking me. I know I'm recording still. I know I still have battery and I still have some memory. Just simple things that you take for granted that make this process enjoyable and allowed me to be a content creator in the video sphere. Once that door opened up, and I can say that this year in 2022, I've done more professional video than I have professional photography, and I've made more money doing that. So I have these 2 careers now as a freelancer much thanks to the Canon R6. I don't think I would have ever gone this far or wanted to had I stayed on the 6D on these older systems. So for that reason alone, I have to recommend this camera and these types of cameras to people because they open doors for you. They open opportunities. They create ways for you to show your creativity. So much so for me that I actually changed the name of my business from Demand in Photography to Demand in Digital to encompass all of the things that this camera was allowing me to do. 4K, 60 frames per second, slow motion, stop motion. If you feel like photography has gotten stale for you and you're not growing, your business has slowed down, I highly recommend investing in a camera like this that is going to allow you to stay relevant and stay interested in this business of content creation. Even look at Instagram. Everybody's complaining about how their model has been changing. It's favoring video over photography. And you could stay where you are and fight that all day long and just say, I am a photographer. I just do stills and that's it. And okay, fine. But if the world is moving like this and you are just staying stationary, you will eventually fall behind. And I believe we have to embrace what's happening. You don't have to fully convert one-to-one and switch over and abandon the old, but you have to bring in the new and embrace it and learn it and discover it. And that's only possible with this new gear, like the Canon R6, to a degree at the quality and industry standard that we're seeing online. So 2 years later, we're here with this camera, and there's definitely some downfalls that people need to be aware of with this camera that might influence your specific decision for your scenario in life and your business. So something like battery life. The battery life is not very good on these heavy digital mirrorless systems with LCDs running, electric viewfinders running, IBIS running, autofocus running. These all drain so much power from the batteries that to go through like an 8-hour day in a studio or an event wedding, you're going to go through 2, 3, 4 batteries through a day. Whereas DSLR systems could just use one through a whole day pretty safely. One as like a backup most days, but you have to be aware that you're going to be sinking more into these batteries, especially if you have 2 cameras. You're looking at 8 batteries for a whole day if you're running them both simultaneously. That's something to consider. I'm sure this will get better as these systems improve, but know that that is a downfall. But for me, it's not a deal breaker. I'm okay changing a battery. It doesn't make a big deal to me, but for some people, it is. We've all been through the overheating discussions, shooting 4K for longer than 30 minutes on the Canon R6 in a higher temperature will give an overheat warning and turn the camera off. And I only first encountered that just a few weeks ago myself. But when I think about the bigger scenario, I live in Toronto, and that kind of hot weather is not very common most of the year. I'm not always shooting outdoors, and I'm not always shooting video for 20 to 30 minutes. I'm usually shooting shorter clips indoors in colder temperatures. So I'm not too concerned right now, but as my video career grows, if I want to be serious about it being a video editor, and I want all the doors and options open to me, I can't have those restrictions. So the Canon R6 would not be a good camera for anybody doing serious professional video as a career, shooting long videos indoors and outdoors. You need a camera that's going to stay on. It's as simple as that. So for my needs, it wasn't a deal breaker because I can control the scenarios I'm working in. I'm more of a hobbyist and enthusiast, amateur, professional, whatever you want to call it. I can get away with certain things. I can rent different gear. I can shoot it differently. But if you are constrained to like long videos in hot weather, you cannot get this camera. You need something different. I don't know what that is, but that is a huge downfall for this camera. Another issue would be like the 20 megapixel sensor. It's not a deal breaker for me. I have found that I actually enjoy the smaller file size. Goes easier on my hard drive and my storage. Things move faster. I don't crop a lot. It's never become a problem for me, other than maybe where I've done 1 or 2 prints that, sure, they could have been a little bit sharper, but they were not bad at all. 20 megapixels is a completely acceptable size for so much that we need to do as photographers. And video, I'm not seeing any issues either. I can shoot 4K, no problem. And now that I've sold my Canon 6D, I'm thinking that my backup camera maybe should be something a little higher in the megapixel world, maybe the Canon R. It's a 30 megapixel camera. If it just has to be something usable and compatible with my system, a nice boost in megapixel would be pretty neat to have for, I think those things go for like $1,500 to $2,000 in the used market. That's a great deal to buy into the mirrorless system and get that. So the last thing I'll talk about with this camera is to look at Canon's positioning of this camera in the market as a tool for versatile, diverse creators who are innovators in this field. This is not a camera geared towards studio professionals who shoot the same thing every day in a secure environment with the same gear. I don't think those are the people who should be buying this camera. You should stick with what you have going. It's working. There's no need to change and adapt into a whole new system. But if you're a content creator looking to, with a lot of vision and a lot of drive, who wants to push the boundaries, explore creative opportunities and options, and just offer yourself and the world a different view, the Canon R6 will really open up some doors and open up some eyes for you and your business that I really highly recommend you explore if you're interested in that. And I know a lot of you out there want better work and want to stay relevant and get in the limelight, and you need a camera body like this to help you do that. And I highly recommend it, especially for younger photographers starting out. You don't want to get stuck in an old system if you're really serious about this and hinder yourself. So keep your options open, really consider this camera. This isn't a technical review that's going to compare this with the 5D, the Sony and the Nikon systems. I'm sure they all do great things for you. I'm more of a creative, practical mind who wants a tool that will allow him to do things in an easy way, and I really have no complaints with the R6 and its ability to allow me to do that and things that I didn't even know were possible. Really, really happy with this camera. I can't see any reason why I wouldn't recommend it if you meet the criteria like I mentioned, where you're willing to invest in high-end gear, high-end lenses, you're okay with switching batteries, you're interested in video and not just photography, and you're not doing wild blow-ups with your images, and you're happy with at most cropping like 20% into your images. Don't expect like a 50% crop to print 11 by 16 and still be like super duper sharp. It's not going to happen. You probably need the R5 for that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. The jury has made their decision, and I approve this camera.